Here comes Vincent Kennedy McMahon.
Vince
And he
Jr.
goes, Sarge, are you ready? And I said, ready? I was born ready, Vince. What do you want? What do you need? He said, do you want to do it? And I said, do what? He said, what you told my father 3 weeks ago over at Jimmy Weston's. And I said, oh, you want me to go against the Iron Sheik? He goes, yeah. I said, okay. When? He goes, right now.
All right, so I'm just finishing. I had a little Roddy Piper. I had some snake juice, and now I've got the Sarge.
Yo, Joe.
At ease here, Sarge.
As you were.
Yes, sir. Welcome.
Carry on.
Welcome to the After Chat for Sportskeeda. It's so good to see you again. We go back a long way.
We do. Yeah. Back when you were in Long Island.
That's right.
Long Island.
Yes, Long Island. And you used to come to the office periodically.
Yes.
And,
yes.
Yeah, by the way, I also still have that picture in my finger book collection of you in my studio giving me the finger. So I haven't published that yet. So I don't know when it's going to get out there. But anyway,
that'll be one of those coffee table books.
Oh, what I'm going to do, I might do a magazine just called the Finger Book.
Yeah, that would be good.
Because I've got Dusty giving me the finger. I've got so many people giving me the finger.
Bill Apter thinks you're number one.
That's it.
That'd be the name of the book.
Right. Attention.
You're number one in Bill Apter's book.
I have to be. Nobody else is going to make me number one.
Nobody else will be.
That's it. You're right.
I don't know why I'm even on your show, but I'm on.
Because you are terrific. And we know for such a long time. And I've been trying to, I know I've had you on my show lots of times in person when we've done interviews up at Bud Carson's place and Tommy Fier's place. But reason I wanted to bring you in is the editors of Sportskeeda and I were chatting, and this is, we're taping this very soon after you attended the life celebration of your old arch enemy, but dear friend, the Iron Sheik, Khosrow Vaziri. And so before we go into the celebration of his life, how did you first, I don't think anyone knows how you first met him.
Well, I met Khosrow when I went to watch a training camp in Eden Prairie, Minnesota, near where I lived. A friend of mine by the name of Bill Tweet was a sports writer. And he was given the assignment to take a film crew out to the Bird Gagne's training camp in 1972. And Bill and I used to go to the wrestling matches all the time at the Minneapolis Auditorium. And he called me the night before and he said, I've got this assignment. Do you want to go out there with me and watch it? So I asked my dad if I could get away for a few hours away from the roofing company. And he said, yeah, go. So when I got out there, I walked into this barn and it had chickens and cows and ducks and bales of hay. And all the way to the one end of the barn was a wrestling ring. Actually, it was a boxing ring.
I was there.
Now that I know, because it had 4 ropes. At that time, I didn't know the difference between a wrestling ring or a boxing ring. But it had 4 ropes, and they asked the crew to come up and start filming and observing, and my friend Bill was taking notes. And when I looked in the ring, I saw different men in the ring that I knew from my high school days in Eden Prairie, and some of them I wrestled actually in opposite high schools. Some I knew just from other high schools around the area. And one big guy I remembered was a weightlifter from the Olympics, and that was Campatera.
Yeah.
And so I just watched it, and I noticed this young, skinny guy. Well, he looked young. This skinny guy, about 180 pounds, and I thought, geez, I don't know if he'll make it because he wasn't that big, and that was Khosrow. And he didn't say much. He just kind of stood there. There wasn't an ounce of fat on him. I mean, he looked like a collegiate wrestler for sure, but being a professional wrestler, I wasn't sure if he would have the weight, but kind of proved me wrong later on. And after I left there, I won't go through all the details of everybody denying what happened there, but I started wrestling. I used to go to the gymnasium and work out, and Khosrow showed up there. And we would work out together after he'd been at training camp, and he would tell me what exercises to do to be in shape, because I decided to go through the camp the next year when Chris Taylor got out of the Olympics.
Did he give you the Persian clubs?
No, he didn't have them then. Didn't have them then. Thank God. And anyway, but there was a mat there, and he would take me on the mat and tie me up like a pretzel. Wow. And I thought, geez, this guy is really good. He's like 180 pounds. I was probably about 230, 240 at that time. And he was, he went to a certain point where he could make me tap out, or he could just go a little bit further and do some damage, but he didn't. And I thought, well, this guy's a pretty good guy. So after he got out of camp and did some refereeing and putting the ring up, he saw me at the gym and said, you have roofing company? And I said, yes. And he said, could I work for you? I said, well, aren't you going to be a professional wrestler? And he said, yeah, but not much money right now. So I need to make money and eat and be able to stay places. So my dad and I put him to work in our roofing company, and he was our kettleman. So that's how I first got to know Khosrow. And shortly after I got through my camp, I went out to Vancouver, Canada, and we kind of just lost. He worked for a little while after I left, but then he started getting into more full-time wrestling and going around different parts of the country. And we kind of lost, we never got to see much of each other after that, until we ran into each other eventually down in Kansas City, 1974, 75. And he was Hussein Arab or something like that. He had started wearing the headdress, but he wasn't the Iron Sheik. And I noticed that he put some weight on, and he kind of started looking differently. But we would travel together in Kansas City because we were both on the same side of the fence. We were both in the same locker room, and he saw where my wife and I got an apartment in Kansas City. So he asked if I would help him out to get an apartment for himself there. And then Billy Red Cloud came down from Minnesota and moved in with him. And they traveled together. And then Kaz would come over to our apartment, usually about an hour before we were to leave. And I had my oldest daughter was 2 years old then. And he loved playing with her. And so he would put her on his lap and get one of her books and start reading to her. And he would look at a picture like an animal, and he'd say, Nikki, what is this? And she would say, I don't know. And he said, that's a bird. Oh, okay. And then pretty soon he would come over almost every day and put her on his lap and go through the book. And they were learning all different types of animals. And he told my wife Diane and I that he would watch Sesame Street to learn how to speak better English and learn the alphabet and numbers and things like that. And he was with my daughter. He was kind of learning how to read a little bit more each day with her help. And she was only 2 years old, but he just loved coming over. And then when we would come home from a show, my wife would always have us dinner because we never ate before a match. And then when we would come back to the apartment, she would make us a really nice dinner. And so when he finally met Carol Peterson, his wife-to-be, he would on Saturday nights in Kansas City would be our last night, and then we were off Sundays, and we would start back up again Monday night in St. Joe, Missouri for television. And so he would, after he met Carol, he would leave on Saturday night and drive to Minnesota and then come back in time to be at TV on Monday night. And so he just was enamored and in love. And I said, well, where does Carol live? He said, Edina. I said, good, good. I said,
right in the territory.
Very good place to meet someone. And I said, what does she do? Oh, she wasn't sure what she did, but I said, what color hair does she have? Blonde. And I said, oh, is she a Scandinavian? Yes. I said, very good. Now you got a real Minnesota lady there. So of course he kept going back and forth, and he decided to ask her for her hand, and they got married. And then he started seeing a little bit more of her, and we, we're still traveling. And when we would go up to Minnesota, my wife and I, Kaz would and Carol would invite us over to their house, or we would be at a restaurant, and she'd say, you guys got me in a lot of different things in my life. And we said, well, what? Well, whenever Kaz comes home from wrestling at night, no matter what time it is, I have to get up out of bed and make him dinner. Wow. Because he said that's what the wrestler wives do. That's their job.
Did you ever think back then, and probably not, that you two would probably be one of the greatest feuds ever in the business?
Never gave it a thought.
How did it happen? We would
travel down the road for miles and miles.
How did it actually happen? Did Vince call the two of you into the office one day and just, because of what the temperature in the United States was back then, you being sergeant, him being from Iran, when Vince laid that all out, did you realize that it was going to be what it became?
No, I was in Minneapolis wrestling a Super Destroyer Mark II, and Pat Patterson was going to New York, so I gave him some pictures of Sergeant Slaughter because I had to put the Sarge away for a while. My mother got sick with cancer, so I was working my dad's roofing company for him so he could be with my mother. And so while I was able to get on a plane and get back the same night with Vern's 8-passenger plane, I was able to wrestle and roof for my father. And so it got to the point where Pat Patterson was going to New York to work, and I gave him some photos of Sergeant Slaughter, and I said, would you mind giving these to Mr. McMahon Sr.? And he said, oh, yeah, I'll do that. So about 2 weeks later, I got a call from Mr. McMahon Sr. asking me if I would come in. He said, I'm very interested in your character. I've never seen a drill instructor as a character in wrestling. He said, I'm interested. So I went to New York, and my first tour of duty, I was the villain, the bad villain. I'm kind of skipping through a lot of those things. I had the alley fight with Pat Patterson and the matches with Bob Backlund in the Garden for the title. And but
I was there. I was there at ringside for every one of those shooting pictures.
Yeah. And so I had a lot of heat on me. And so Mr. McMahon Sr. came to me and said, I'd like you to leave for a while. And I said, did I do something wrong? He said, no, you're doing everything great. I just want you to go away for a while. He said, Charlotte's looking for some villains. So I went down to Charlotte and won the U.S. title 2 different times, and then teamed up with Don Kernodle, and we won the NWA World Heavyweight Championships. And then it was time to go. And so I headed back up to my second tour of duty in the WWF at that time. And Vincent Kennedy McMahon was about to take over. And so when I came back for the first tapings again in Allentown, I was even a bigger villain. And we went out, I'm sure you remember the dinners, if you got invited out by Arnold Skolin to dinner with Vince McMahon Sr.
Jimmy Weston's restaurant.
Jimmy Weston's, exactly. So that's where we headed. And Mr. McMahon Sr. always called me Sergeant. He never called me drill sergeant or drill instructor, or Sergeant Slaughter was always Sergeant. He said, Sergeant, it's so good to have you back. You're the best villain of all time, and really put me over. And I said, well, Mr. McMahon, if you think I'm such a good villain, you ought to see me as a hero. And he said, a hero? No, Sergeant. Sergeant Slaughter could never be a hero, maybe for a few months, but then you'd have to go back to be a villain. And he said, but what you got in mind? And as a typical promoter would. So I started laying out this scenario. I said, you get the Iron Sheik from Iran. I said, nobody ever got to punch Ayatollah right in the nose for all that he did with this hostage situation and the Blackhawks going down and the murder of the Marines at the embassy. I went through the whole scenario, and his mouth kind of dropped open, like he was almost hypnotized him, telling him all these things. And he goes, oh, and he caught himself and he said, that's really good, but no, that would only work for a little while. And then I look over his shoulder, and there's Vincent Kennedy McMahon going, yeah. And so didn't think much of it. He said, come on, or Vince Sr. said, Vinny, don't you turn the sergeant into a hero. Don't you do it. And he said, okay, Pops, let's go. And off they went. So I wrestled 3 more weeks in the territory, and here comes Allentown again for 3 more tapings. And I come out as the villain. People, throwing stuff at me and spitting at me and yelling and kicking and punching me. And so we got to through the first hour. Then the second hour I had a promo to do. And then the Iron Sheik was wrestling on the second hour, and he had a promo to do. And then he was scheduled to be on the third hour. So here comes, I'm all done for the night. So I'm taking my things off, my combat boots and my fatigues. And here comes Vincent Kennedy McMahon.
Vince
And he
Jr.
goes, Sarge, are you ready? And I said, ready? I was born ready, Vince. What do you want? What do you need? He said, do you want to do it? And I said, do what? He said, what you told my father 3 weeks ago over at Jimmy Weston's. And I said, oh, you want me to go against the Iron Sheik? He goes, yeah. I said, okay. When? He goes, right now. And I said, you mean right now? He said, in 5 minutes. I'm going to go back out and do the announcing, and I'm going to go in the truck and tell them to cue up your music. And I'm not telling Blassie, who was Ayatollah Blassie for the Iron Sheik. I'm not telling the Iron Sheik. The only people that are going to know about this is you and me. Element of surprise. He said, I want element of surprise. So that's what happened. And so the Marine Corps hymn plays. The Iron Sheik was out there with Eddie Gilbert, beat him up pretty badly. They're going to put him on a gurney, and Iron Sheik was like knocking him off the gurney and beating him up some more. And all of a sudden, the Marine Corps hymn played. And I was watching the monitor, and I could read both Freddie's lips and the Iron Sheik's lips, and they're both going, wrong music, and they're looking around like, what? They're playing Slaughter's music. They're supposed to be playing our music, And so here I come, and they're and Freddie Blassie was such a veteran. He knew something was up. And so when I came out, he kept Khosrow and I apart, the Iron Sheik and I apart, and got it back to the dressing room. But right before Vince had gone back to his desk to announce this thing, he said, Sarge, give me your best General Patton promo. And I said, okay. Now I can't find my brown round. I can't find my campaign cover because one of the ring attendants brought it in and put it somewhere. I can find it. And my music's playing. So I grab a baseball cap and I run out there. And I declared war on the Iron Sheik. And I said, Sheik, there's one thing I've always done when I was a little boy in school, the Cub Scouts and the Boy Scouts and the Marine Corps. And I put my hand on my heart and I started doing the Pledge of Allegiance. Well, Bill, you were probably there. You saw all the people jump up on their chairs, got their lights, the lighters going, and they're doing the Pledge of Allegiance with me. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it.
It started a whole new era.
Innocence.
It started a whole new era in the business.
Oh, it's incredible. So I got all done. Now I'm the biggest hero of all time. And Vince McMahon comes in, he hugs me. I can't believe what you just did. And you're bigger than Hulk Hogan could ever be. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, Vince, you show me your side of the business and I'll show you our side of the business and you'll be farting through silk in no time. And he said, okay.